Good morning. I gotta get started here with this video clip because I'm kind of late this morning. I woke up a little bit late. I had trouble sleeping last night. I've got some stress going on in my business, and so it's just kind of been stressful. So I didn't sleep really well last night. But now, if you're watching this and you're worried about Josh, remember that I recorded this probably over a month ago. So you probably don't worry about me today. My stress is gone. I'm moving forward and excited about life. Not sure I love my hair at the moment, but anyway, let's talk. I want us to look at the parable of the Good Samaritan today, but the thing that kind of sparked my interest in this conversation or this video was a video by Jonathan Haidt, Jonathan Haidt or Hyatt, and I want to tell you that if you are interested, you might want to stop my video, go Google the TED Talk by Jonathan Haidt on TED of 2008. It's called The Moral Roots of Liberals and Conservatives. I'd like for you to go watch that video. I think it'll help you kind of understand where I'm coming from in this conversation. But if you don't, let me give you a quick summation. Basically, Jonathan walks up and he says, hey, most of the people here are a little more liberal. TED Talk attendees are a little more liberal. He kind of explains that for the most part, it's open individuals have an affinity for liberal, progressive, left-wing political news, whereas closed individuals prefer conservative, traditional right-wing views. And then he says it's a global community, welcome people from every discipline, culture, who seek a deeper understanding of the world and who hope to turn that understanding into a better future for us all. That is from TED. That's a quote from TED. And so if you're participating in the TED Talks, you're probably a little more open. You're a little more of a global community kind of person. And anyway, so let's talk about the moral roots of liberals and conservatives. He basically makes the argument that there are five moral foundations that he can kind of summarize all of people's moral beliefs in. They are the following five: harm, fairness, in-group, loyalty. So let's talk about harm. Harm means it's very important to me that we don't hurt other individuals. We don't hurt people. We don't damage people. That's kind of just built into us from a child. There's this idea that we don't hurt people. We should not do anything that would hurt a child, hurt somebody else. Fairness. The second idea is this moral foundation of fairness. If I get one, my brother gets one. If I give one to my kid, I give one to my other kid. There's this idea of fairness. We come upon a strawberry bush and there's 75 strawberries and there's 3 of us. It's fair that we get 25 strawberries apiece. There's this innate sense of fairness. Third thing is in-group loyalty. So if the 3 of us are together and we're walking through the woods and we come upon a strawberry bush, and about that time another group of 3 people come up to us, and we find this loyalty to our group. If the other group says, hey, you know what, we're going to take these 75 strawberries and divide it by 5, but Johnny there, he doesn't get any, and Johnny's part of our group, we're going to be loyal to Johnny and say, no, Johnny's in. And we might even say that our group has more right to it than the other group, or it's more important that we protect our group, or it's more important that I'm loyal to my group. And loyalty and in-group camaraderie is very strong in our world today. We have Tar Heels versus that other nasty team from Durham. There's the Tar Heels, and then there's all the other evil people. We have this in our sports teams. America's team, the people would say it's the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm not a Dallas Cowboys fan, but you get the idea. There's this strong idea of in-group loyalty. Israel versus Palestine. There's America versus Russia. There's this great in-group loyalty issue. Then there's authority. we have a president today that a lot of people don't respect. We had a president, 4 years ago for 8 years in Obama that a lot of people didn't respect. And so there's this struggle with, should we be respectful of authority? Then there's purity. There are things that we say, well, you can't do that because it's not clean, it's not pure, it's not right. So maybe it's there was a big fight in the first century about eating meat that was sacrificed to idols, and there was arguments about whether or not you should touch a pig's skin, or or a leper. People with leprosy, they kept them away. So there was this purity, cleanliness thing. And so those are the 5 moral foundations. There's harm and fair. There's harm. There's fairness. There's national in-group loyalty. There's authority and purity. Now, these things get thrown to an extreme. With harm, there's sometimes people who are pacifists, meaning that they don't want to hurt anybody. They're not passive, but pacifists get accused of being passive. The thing that we get screamed at all the time is, well, if somebody comes in and they're going to rape your wife and kill your kids, or are you going to just watch them? No, I'm not going to just watch them, but I'm opposed to hurting them or killing them. Then in fairness, we go, oh, fairness, you want to be how to be fair? We're going to go all the way to socialism or communism. So that's the argument against fairness is communism. The argument against harm is passivity. The argument against in-group loyalty, that would be, crazy nationalism. The argument against authority would be that it leads to fascism, and the argument against purity would be that it leads to just haphazard nastiness. I think I've got the slide at the end to talk about that. Okay, but as I was going through this, if you've watched the video, if you watch the TED Talk, you know that liberals have two moral foundations. Don't hurt anyone, try to be fair. But conservatives may have these 2, but these 3 kind of come up as the more conservative you get, the more right you get, the right wing, you add these other 3, and they're either equal to the harm and fairness, or maybe even they usurp the harm and fairness. So in-group nationalism's a big deal. Let's make America great again. Authority, well, we got to respect the president. And then purity, we can't let other races in. We can't let immigrants in. We can't. Okay, so there's more of a concern about these bottom 3 with the right wing. Thinking about this, it's funny. The next word in this passage, so the word I'm going to start reading with, is looking for a loophole. I'm not looking for a loophole. I want to give you a passage of scripture that came into my mind as I was watching this TED Talk. And this passage of scripture, I think, kind of touches on all of these. Looking for a loophole. This is from the Message. This is Luke chapter 10, I believe. Luke chapter 10, 29 through 37. This is the parable of the Good Samaritan. Looking for a loophole, he asked, just how would you define neighbor? Jesus answered by telling a story. There was once a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. On the way, he was attacked by robbers. They took his clothes, beat him up, and went off, leaving him half dead. Luckily, a priest was on his way down the same road. But when he saw him, he angled across to the other side of the street. Then a Levite, religious man, showed up, and he also avoided the injured man. A Samaritan traveling the road came on him. When he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him, and he gave him first aid, disinfecting and bandaging his wounds. Then he lifted him up onto his donkey, led him into an inn, and made him comfortable. In the morning, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, take good care of him. If it costs more, put it on my bill. I'll pay you back on my way. I'll pay you on my way back. What do you think? Which of these 3 became a neighbor to the man who was attacked by robbers? The one who treated him kindly, the religion scholar responded. Jesus said, go and do the same. Go and be like this man. All right, so here we have a story where Jesus is telling us about harm. He's talking about harm. He's talking about somebody getting beat up. I can't read the words Jesus, attacked, beat, and half dead without thinking about the cross. What does Jesus say at the cross? Jesus says, if you have to harm someone, if you have to escape someone, if you have to kill or hurt someone, then let it be me. Let it be me. So Jesus, on this harm thing, He was adamantly opposed to us hurting people. He went so far as to say, I think Jesus took this harm thing so serious that he said, I'd rather see deicide than homicide. I'd rather you kill God than to kill your fellow man. So Jesus on this harm thing, I would say it ranked up there as a serious, strong moral foundation. Does this story say anything about fairness or reciprocity? Well, yeah, it does. Here, the hero in Jesus' story takes all the expense, and he doesn't try to constrict the innkeeper into taking on his service, nor does he ask the victim to cover his own expenses. He personally accepts the cost. So when it comes to this fairness thing, and it comes to this harm thing, I think the message from Jesus in both scenarios is, if you insist on harming somebody, let me be the one harmed. Let me take the harm. Let me take the injury. If you got to hit somebody, hit me. And then when it comes to this expense thing, if it's going to be unfair to somebody, if somebody's going to lose, if somebody's going to take the hit, let it be me. Let me pay. Let me personally accept the cost. He says, I'll pay it. I'll take care of it. Put it on my bill. Okay, so this harm and fairness, reciprocity, I think it's very high on Jesus's moral foundations. All right, here's the third thing. Does this story say anything about in-group loyalty? Yes, it absolutely does. The hero of the story is a Samaritan. Jesus is a Jew. He's speaking to Jews. He's talking to people that their attitude about the Samaritans is that they spit at the Samaritans. They stomp out the Samaritans. There's this incredible hatred at the Samaritans. But in this story, Jesus makes the Samaritan the hero. Well, absolutely it says something about the problem of racism and nationalism. Jesus made the hero in his story a Samaritan, an outsider. Does this story say anything about authority and respect? Well, yeah, it does. The first person coming down the road to help that could have, luckily it says, luckily should have helped this person. Eugene says, luckily, but who should have been the obvious hero of the story wasn't a hero at all. Instead of doing the right thing, he did the exact opposite. He wasn't a hero, but he was a zero in this story. In this story, the priest, the one who had the authority, who had the respect, who was probably wearing his tassels, he had all the authority and respect a person could need in this culture, he does nothing to help. Sometimes we should disrespect authority. Sometimes we should stand up against authority. Sometimes we should say, you know what, you're not a priest at all. You're not who you're supposed to be at all. They aren't always on the right side, and we should call them out. In this story, Jesus is calling out the religious powerhouse. Finally, does this story say anything about purity and sanctity? Yes, it does. Then there's a Levite, a religious man shows up, and he avoids this injured man. The injury and certainly the potential death would have made the Levite unclean and would have prevented him from serving in the temple. So what does it say about purity and sanctity? It says sometimes our purity and our sanctity laws get in our way of doing the right thing. What would have been the right thing for this Levite or this priest to do? They should have given him first aid. They should have taken care of him. They should have put him up on the horse. They should have been messy and covered with blood and possibly even ceremonially unclean and unable to do their religious duties, because that would have been the right thing to do. The moral foundation of purity and sanctity should have been tossed out when it came to taking care of this man. So what's the downside of these five moral foundations? Well, the things that people would get accused of in the first two would be passivity and socialism. In the last three, the problem that I want to avoid from being too tied to these moral foundations is nationalism. It's a problem when we say, oh, let's make America great again, and we don't give a about the rest of the world. Do you understand that? When we say let's make America great again, even if it's at the expense of Palestine and Iraq and Iran, and when we want to make America great again and it's at the expense of the rest of the world, we're not being morally secure or morally high or morally good. Our in-group loyalty has screwed our ability to follow Christ. When we say authority, you got to respect authority regardless of what that authority is, we're missing the point. When we're saying, hey, you should stand for the national anthem, you should pledge allegiance to the flag, and that flag is flying in other countries and people see it as the ones that are coming in and hurting their family and killing their people with drones and stealing their oil and making their life miserable, that is an authority. It's time we stop saluting. It's time we stop standing for a Star-Spangled Banner that talks about the rocket's red glare. Because authority is less important than staying with this harm. We don't want to hurt people. We can't sing and celebrate the rocket's red glare and then expect our kids to be kind and loving to others. And this purity thing, if you stick so strongly to purity, we got to keep our race white, we got to keep our nation pure and free from these other people, you might as well be stoning these refugees at the border who we're saying you can't come in, because what we're doing is putting them out and not caring for them, and they are going to get stoned. It's that whole purity leads to stoning, authority leads to fascism, in-group leads to nationalism, and it's not healthy and it's not good. So according to this author, yeah, I'd be a liberal, because I do think that harm and fairness are drastically more important than in-group loyalty, authority, and purity. Well, that's my thoughts. I hope you watched that TED Talk. It was worth your time. And he goes on to talk about some things that are very, very valuable. He talks about how the left should talk to the right and how the right may be wise in talking to the left. And it's worth your time to watch that TED Talk. Thanks so much.